Hi, I'm Martin Felsen. Welcome to CityDesign, the channel where we explore how we shape cities and how cities shape us. Today's episode is a list of the top 10 events that changed cities in 1968. Why 1968? It's one of the most explosive years in urban history, a year that still burns in the world's memory. Assassinations, uprisings, protests, a war abroad, and a cultural war at home. Cities weren't just the backdrop, they were the battlegrounds. People took to the streets, governments pushed back. The very idea of a shared city, what it means, who it's for, was under siege. The country pulled itself apart. And from that tension, new kinds of city making emerged, some inventive, some destructive. Each event on my list left something behind, sometimes a blueprint, sometimes a visible scar etched into the city. Let's begin with two extraordinary achievements from 1968. Humans walking on the moon and the release of 2001: A Space Odyssey. For many, they were both transcendent experiences, events that reshaped how people thought about technology, the future, and what it means to be human. Science fiction had long been imagined at this time. Writers like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne dreamed of journeys into space. But no one had seen or felt anything quite like this. Kubrick in particular made us question everything. What is humanity in the age of machines? What happens when our creations surpass us? Architects were paying attention too, especially the British collective Archigram. They imagined cities as living, mobile systems, filled with kinetic energy, cybernetic logic, and modular technology. Although Archigram rarely built anything, their vision changed everything. One of the many examples, the Pompidou Center in Paris. Its exposed structure and vibrant systems directly reflected Archigram's dream of cities that think and adapt, just like the intelligent machines in Kubrick's future. In Washington, D.C., a city within a city was built, not as a spectacle, but for survival. It was called Resurrection City, an initiative of the Poor People's Campaign led by Martin Luther King. For 6 weeks, over 3,000 people occupied the National Mall beside the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. They were there to demand dignity, jobs, and housing. It was a multiracial coalition. Black, white, Latino, Native American, Asian, all united by poverty and inequality. But the government didn't listen. The encampment was dismantled. The lawn was cleared. Yet, Resurrection City remains a memorable illustration of urban opposition, a muddy, makeshift settlement in the heart of the capital. This was a reminder that poverty is a design problem too. Many of these issues can still be heard in the 1968 song Love Child, performed by Diana Ross and the Supremes. The song tells a story of life in public housing, of fear, shame, and insecurity. It gave a mainstream audience a window into the struggles of poverty, something Resurrection City briefly laid bare on the national stage. Meanwhile, in Chicago, something futuristic was rising along the riverbank, Marina City. Twin 65-story residential towers, now nicknamed the Corn Cobs, spiraled upward above a marina, shopping center, and theater. Funded by a labor union of janitors and elevator operators, Marina City wasn't built for the elite. It was an alternative to suburban flight, an attempt to pull middle-class life back into the downtown core. When it opened, it was the tallest residential complex in the world. It quickly became a prototype to combine living, working, entertainment, and parking into a vertical community. It's still an icon of high-rise urbanism, and it's a model that's been copy-pasted innumerable times in cities around the world. Next on the list is the Whole Earth Catalog, which is a foundational document of the Green Cities movement. Part magazine, part survivalist manifesto, it offered access to tools for a new kind of counterculture world building. Its pages were filled with guides to ecology, self-reliance, alternative education, and do-it-yourself living. It became a shared reference point for those imagining a different kind of future, off the grid, outside the system. It was Google before Google. The Whole Earth Catalog gave a generation not just resources, but permission to build something better. The 1968 Olympics in Mexico City were meant to be a triumph. The city had been transformed. New stadiums, cultural pavilions, and a new subway system designed to showcase Mexico as a modern global capital. But just 10 days before the opening ceremonies, the city's image shattered. At the National Autonomous University, military troops opened fire on students staging a peaceful protest. The massacre exposed the underside of staged spectacles. As the government attempted to project an image of progress, it was silencing dissent at home. And then came another act of protest, broadcast to the world. On the podium for the 200-meter race, Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their glove fists, not in victory, but in dissent, with a gesture that became an icon of resistance. In New York City, the most powerful city builder in American history lost his final post. Robert Moses resigned as chairman of the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority. For decades, Moses had reshaped New York City with highways, towers, and parks. But his vision came at a cost, displacing hundreds of thousands of people in the name of progress. Luckily, there was pushback. People like Jane Jacobs and other grassroots activists fought back, block by block. They stopped projects like the Lower Manhattan Expressway, which would have sliced through Soho. In the process, this kind of local advocacy changed the story of who gets to shape cities. Jacobs described cities with a precision and sensitivity that Moses lacked. She focused on how streets and spaces are actually used rather than how they appear on a planner's map. From her resistance emerged a new model of planning: bottom-up, human-scaled, participatory. The fall of Moses marked the rise of everyday citizens in shaping their communities. And it set the stage for every urban battle since. Meanwhile, as cities were still burning after Martin Luther King's assassination, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968. The landmark law included the Fair Housing Act. It outlaws discrimination in housing on paper, but on the ground, enforcement was spotty. Zoning remained exclusionary, banks kept redlining. Still, the law has given activists new tools to fight back with, and it reframed housing as a civic right. In Chicago, during the Democratic National Convention, the city became both a fortress and a combat zone. Protesters demanded an end to the Vietnam War and the right for draft-age citizens to vote. They planned a peaceful demonstration. The police planned something else. The Walker Report, the official investigation that followed the convention, called it what it was: a police riot. It was a breakdown of law by those sworn to enforce it. The riot was unrestrained violence inflicted not only on protesters, but also on bystanders, journalists, and residents. Public space would never be the same. Before 1968, parks and plazas were widely seen as democratic forums, places for assembly, protest, or simply gathering. After 1968, those same open spaces are now viewed as potential flashpoints, zones to be controlled, surveilled, and defended during times of unrest. And today, protesting in public typically requires a permit. After 1968, gathering in public isn't a right, it's a risk. Throughout 1968, cities around the world erupted in protest. In Paris, events now known as May 68 began as student demonstrations against the government. Within weeks, they escalated into a nationwide general strike. Millions of workers walked off the job, bringing France to the brink of revolution. In New York City, Columbia University students occupied campus buildings to protest the Vietnam War. These uprisings changed the vocabulary of protest, showing the world that the street could speak and act with real power. Which raises a question: how many people does it take to actually impact and change a government? Political scientists have recently found one answer. They say that when just 3.5% of a population engages in a sustained, nonviolent protest, it almost always succeeds. Revolution doesn't require a majority. just a committed few. And finally, April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Martin Luther King was assassinated. He was in the city supporting striking sanitation workers fighting for fair wages.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
Leaders in the civil rights movement urged a nonviolent response to honor King's deepest beliefs. But the country erupted. More than 100 cities burned. Entire neighborhoods were lost, especially in Black communities. Instead of rebuilding, many governments bulldozed. Highways were driven through the ruins. The results were not renewal, but zones of disinvestment, fractured, forgotten parts of the city that remain incomplete to this day. In Chicago, for example, large swaths of the West Side have never been meaningfully redeveloped, a checkerboard of vacant lots and underinvestment. King's death didn't just wound the soul of the nation, it reshaped the physical and economic landscape of American cities permanently. Like so many events of 1968, the assassination left behind a complicated legacy, sometimes as a blueprint for change, sometimes as a legacy of loss that still shapes our cities today. So that was 1968, a year of anger and ambition, protest and possibility. A year when cities revealed what they could lose and what they could become. If you have suggestions for the next year to explore or events I should include, please drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please share, subscribe, like, and support to keep exploring how we shape cities and how cities shape us. See you next episode.